welcome, folks, to another edition of Our City Matters. Today we have a guest. We have Diane Guimond, and she's running in the campaign for Welfare Commissioner. And so we need to get to know who she is. She's running against Paul Martineau. And here we go, Diane. We have a half hour.
Hi, so thanks for having me on your show.
You're welcome. And you have some things to say about why you're running and how you feel about the welfare department.
Absolutely. Well, as far as reason for running is, as most people will know in this city, this is my third time around. And the reason I decided to run was because there's still work that needs to be done. I feel my message has been heard. I received over 6,000 votes, which is I lost by about 1,000 votes each time. So it says that people are hearing what I'm saying. I think the mayor and aldermen have made some changes. They've changed the hours. It used to be only open to the public 23 hours a week to the public, and they were closed for, the doors were actually closed to the public for 17. Now it's a 35-hour, they're open to the public. So that's better. It's still not perfect because I have questions about, do they really need to be, if they're only open 35 hours to the public, is there a savings there of closing it, changing it from 40 to 35?
It is an emergency case basis that people come to welfare, and if they have an emergency at 4 o'clock, they're not going to get their needs met, or is Mr. Martineau on call?
No. They don't get their needs met at all. They'd have to, if it's medication, they'd have to go to the hospital and probably get admitted, which is going to be far more expensive than if the office was open at a time when they were available.
Right.
And no, Mr. Martineau is not on call. He does not get a call. I don't even believe he responds to, like we had the fire on 2nd Street, my understanding, 17 people displaced. He doesn't even respond to that because the Red Cross does. So there's another, welfare is the office of last resource. So all these other agencies kick in first and then the welfare office. So he doesn't actually need to be there, but would it be helpful to be there? Possibly. Or one of his workers? Possibly.
Since his mission and his charge is to meet the needs of the poor, or the emergency needs of the poor. So if these people need help, then they're going to need his service.
True, true. And we can discuss that further with the sense that his budget, it's an emergency assistance office that fills the immediate need until they can get to Social Security or another office. So we fill that need. He's the only office that can do that with a voucher system and pay directly to a vendor someplace, meaning a business, a pharmacy or someplace, in order to meet that need. If he's not available, it's not happening. And there isn't any office by law except the welfare office that has that statutory law, RSA 165, that says he has to do that. So like the police have a law, the fire have a law, and he has a law. His law is he's the overseer of the poor. Of course, he campaigns with the statement with, and I don't want to, is the taxpayers matter. Well, they do matter. But his responsibility, like the mayor, like the police, like the fire, he has his responsibility. The law specific says he is the overseer of the poor.
So the poor matter.
The poor matter.
First. And
First.
foremost.
That's his ultimate responsibility, is the poor, to be available, to help them, and meet their needs. And their need may be met by a referral to another agency. It doesn't have to meet taxpayer dollar. We're not necessarily going to spend money. And there's still money. He's returning $100,000 based on the audit reports that I read over this weekend from the finance department. He's returning $100,000 each year. We used to say it was a 75-25 split. Now it's a 70% is wages, about $700,000 is wages. About 80 to 85 goes to the emergency shelter. And then another $100,000 he returns to the city. That only leaves about $100,000 that goes to the poor.
Actually, wow.
So it's really, I question those numbers. Do we have too many employees? Are they working too many hours? Or maybe I believe the program the mayor has, a CIP, is maybe they should be dispersing this money, and there should be just an immediate office, a response office. I don't know what the answers are,
So
but
it doesn't-
somebody's got to look at this.
It doesn't need to be run just because the way Mr. Marno runs this office. I mean, there are other ways, and I think you want to bring some different ideas to the office.
Exactly. I think there is some room for good ideas and still save the taxpayers' dollars. The day I get elected is a $50,000 saving to the taxpayers. $50,000 right off the top. That's one thing. Now, if the office is only open 35 hours, we can save 5 hours a week. There's another savings. We can look at how many people are working there versus how $100,000 worth of assistance giving out. Maybe we need to filter some of that money to some of the social agencies who are actually doing the work.
Mm-hmm. So there's new paradigms we could open up in that area.
And I don't have. Nobody has all the answers, but they are worth investigating.
Exactly.
And they will save the taxpayers' dollars.
And you have experience in that office.
Absolutely. I have 13 years experience. I have a college. We talk about the referendum that they want to do in there, and the reason the commissioner wants it is because he wants a qualified person running the job. Now, so he doesn't think that can happen with an elected official. Has to be an appointed. Well, to me, that's a direct insult to the mayor, the alderman, and the school board. They're all elected. State reps, they're not qualified to do their jobs. And if we want to look at qualifications, I've been far more qualified than Paul is. I've got my master's, I have my bachelor's degree. I've studied towards my master's in counseling and psychotherapy. Mm-hmm. I have a certification from the state of New Hampshire in certified public management. I was a town administrator for 7 years. I had over a $30 million budget that I was responsible for. I helped set the tax rate with the Board of Selectmen. So I know the nitty-gritty of how this stuff works.
Mm-hmm. And you were working in that office for those 13 years?
13 as a caseworker. I worked from the ground up. And when I left there from Paul, I was the deputy welfare commissioner. Mm-hmm. So he himself admits that I was a qualified person if he made me his deputy. Right. So, here I am. I can do this job. And I can do it for the taxpayers and the clients. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to do it with compassion. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do it for the poor, because that's my responsibility. And I am going to do it in a way that if it means giving the money to some of the other agencies, well, maybe that's what we have to look at. Mm-hmm. Because they're the ones who are screaming that they need more money. Mm-hmm. And here we have a man who's giving $100,000 back each year to the city, when it could be utilized in another way. It could be utilized maybe for the police or the fire. We were talking we needed policemen a few years back, and there was no money. Well, here's $100,000. That may be one police officer. You just have to. There's something wrong here, and it's festering year after year after year after year after year. And my message is getting out there, but not enough people are getting it. So I'm really grateful for you bringing me on today and giving me this opportunity.
I just hope it goes far and wide.
Yeah, me too, me too. Well, we'll give it a shot again for the third time, and they say third time's a charm. So
Exactly.
Here we go.
Exactly. You want to talk about the referendum.
Yeah.
Why that referendum a little deeper here?
Well, if I can go a little deeper, again, the big component to that is that qualification piece. He doesn't believe that an elected official is qualified to do that job, so they want to change it into an appointed position. And there may be somebody in the office that he's thinking might be able to step up to the plate and do this job. Possibly.
But then won't that make it more political as far as the mayor appointing?
Well,
and every time we change mayor, we get a new appointee for commissioner, or not for commissioner, it would be the welfare department head or something.
Well, again, this to me is a conflict of interest. As an elected official, you have the freedom to do what your job is, being the overseer
accountable
of the
to the voters,
and your accountability. But if you're an appointed position and the mayor says to you, "Hey, the budget's not going well. We need everybody to scrimp and save a little more. Well, okay, I get it, but we have $1 million. We're already giving $100,000 back. How much can you scrimp and save out of there when you're giving $700,000 in wages?
Yeah.
This, again, I have to keep.
Your mission is to the poor. Your mission is not necessarily to the one who's the mayor making the budget.
No, to me, it's a direct conflict of interest between the two parties. And being an elected official, you have, again, you can have a person who spends all the money, or you can have a person who is very tight with the money, or you can have a person like myself who gets it,
More
who
moderate,
understands, who's in the middle, who gets it and understands that you have to be there for these people. But you have to be there with an open mind, knowing that, you have to check the information you're getting before you just provide. But, okay, so a guy comes in today, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and he needs some medication. Okay, can we use some common sense here and say, okay, I don't have time to check every little detail. I'm going to do some, but I don't have time to check every little detail. So you give him meds for a couple of days, and you have him come back. Okay, he's got to come back. Well, okay, he comes back, and then you can do more. You have time to check everything better. So if he's misrepresented, you found out. So you might have spent $20, but the guy got his meds that were important to him, or the child got her meds, or he or she, that were important to that child and that family. Whatever the need was, the family's need was met for that moment.
As an emergency situation.
As an emergency situation.
The application can be, how many pages is the application?
The application is,
No.
it's like 7 or 8 pages, and what makes that, it's fine print, it's very intense. And if you're not feeling well, you have mental health, or you've been diagnosed with cancer, and you have a handful of script, sitting in an office is not good. And, if we haven't discussed the guidelines, but the one thing that is important is somebody comes to that window. There's a sign there that says if you have any communicative diseases, you need to tell the girl at the window. I read the HIPAA laws this weekend. To me, that's a direct conflict and an opening up the city to a huge lawsuit.
So you would take that sign down?
I would take that sign down.
And you would probably observe the person, and is this person having trouble breathing? They might have tuberculosis or something, or you mean maybe the person would offer and say, I'm not feeling well, and say, I don't know, you want to protect the...
But you need to take that person to an area, and they have 2 secure interview rooms, so
Okay.
they need to take that person into that room and talk to them in a confidential way.
Right.
Not through a bulletproof glass window with a slot underneath it and a full room of people. That's
Right,
not
right.
confidential.
No, that's
That is
not.
not fair to that person who's trying to explain, who already feels terrible and not feeling good. Those kinds of things. And
Very impersonal.
very impersonal, not compassionate, and certainly not being the overseer of the poor. Is that overseeing this person?
In a dignified manner.
In a dignified manner.
Right.
Absolutely not. So that's been my message for the last 2 elections, and it's been a strong one. And, my signs always said being nice mattered, and he countered that with the taxpayers matter.
Well, because you were working in that office with Mr. Martineau.
Yes.
And we don't want to get into a negative campaign here, but
No.
The thing is that you've witnessed many things in that office.
Oh, absolutely.
That you would not do that way.
Well, absolutely, and to be honest and candid, and since it's me, I will say that the reason I left is because I was the employee. He was an elected official. I had no way of making those changes unless he accepted them. I could tell him about them, and I could suggest those things to him, but ultimately it was his call. And I knew that. In my life, it was affected me physically and emotionally, and I had to go.
Yeah, it was sad sometimes, perhaps, and yeah.
It was very difficult for me to leave, but I knew I had to. And then for many years after that, I was asked numerous times, "Why aren't you running? Why aren't you running? Why aren't you running?" And eventually, I took the message seriously, and I stepped up to the plate, and here I am.
Oh, that's good.
And clearly, 6,000 people recognized my message, and I have, since I've announced, I've received phone calls and numerous people on the streets I've seen, and they have patted me on the back. And I went to the forum on the heroin forum last week, and lots of people spoke to me there about it. So it's been a very positive experience coming back.
I don't know if you want to give your phone number or for people to reach you, or how they can reach you to get a sign for their lawn.
Yeah, well, you can call me. I have a cell phone. It's 812-6807. And if you want to write to me, you can write to me, send me an email at Diane, Diane Guim at AOL.com. So if you want to call me or write to me about something, or if you're having a problem, I can direct you at least between now and the election to see. And that happened a couple of times during the prior elections. I was contacted, helped them set up appeals, and they won because they were and that one of them was the RSA 165-19. They were holding, this was a brother and sister situation where a brother was living with a sister. He was out of work, had a pending lawsuit. The sister, and I have been released to speak about these things, but I'm not going to give the name because that's confidential. But the sister was getting buried. She was going to lose her house. And the commissioner pulled the RSA 165-19. It said the sister had to help him and continue to help him even if she was going to lose her house. And the law says mother, father, brother, sister, but only if they are financially able to, not.
And what criteria does that bring in? I mean, how do you make the criteria of who is financially able? And
you ask for their financial statements.
And if you got $10 extra in your pocket, you have to give it,
You got to use some logic. One of the things that I understand that's in the guidelines, that if you have a 14-year-old child or a teenager who is working, and you come into that office and you need some help, then that child's income needs to go towards assisting the family. Now I get it. I absolutely get it. The family's in need. Everybody needs to jump in. But do we really want to discourage a 14-year-old child who's just starting to work, or 15 or 16?
Market Basket or someplace,
Do we want to start a war in the house?
No. And do we want to take him away from his schoolwork, really?
Do we want to take him away from school? Do we want to put a situation where he says, Mom, I don't care, I'm not helping you, I'm going to go live with Charlie down the street. So now we're setting up a child to be in a very unsafe environment. So his responsibility is the overseer of the poor. That includes the family. He needs to look at that family union, and you need to use common sense when you're making these decisions. Okay, so you say to the kid, you're making $100. Well, okay, your mother needs milk 3 times a week. Will you buy the milk? Maybe we can do a little more than that. But, something like that, something reasonable that's respectable for him. He can feel like he's contributing. But he's going to need sneakers. He's going to need pants and shirts and underwear and socks
Trying
for
to take
school.
care of himself and his needs,
So he's already, in a sense, contributing to the household. Are we going to strip him of that? And plus, hurt him in the way, hurt the whole family as we go through it? So this is the other side.
It's very discouraging.
Very discouraging.
It doesn't help anybody.
How does that help Mom and Dad? They have to go back to their child and say, well, I have to take your money from you if I'm going to get some help from the city.
To get food vouchers.
To get maybe, and maybe I'll only get a referral to another agency, or maybe I'll get a $50 food voucher, or maybe, or maybe I'll get rent. But, we have to, again, so if we give them rent, maybe we just need to say, okay, go buy your school clothes. Show us that you bought your school clothes, your underwear, your socks, because you're not going to get them at a donation facility. So so give us your receipt. Show us you bought brand new sneakers. You did some things, and we'll help out the family. There's a way around it, but you have to be reasonable. You have to think outside the box sometimes.
I mean, we see the guidelines. There's 33 pages of guidelines. And half of it is in red now because he made more changes and added to them.
I was happy to see that he did rewrite the guidelines, because I've been after him in my 2 elections to do that. So I was happy, but I'm not happy with what I've seen. I haven't read the whole thing verbatim, but what I have seen is that it is tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. It's almost that they're written so that you don't assist.
There's no discretion on the caseworker.
The common sense is out the window. You know, so you can't be subjective in a situation. And he's got we're paying these people some good money. He's got college graduates with intelligence.
And I know that my alderman, Barbara Shaw, voted no for this document.
I'm happy to hear that.
And because I had a discussion with her about it, and
Yeah.
I said, Barbara, I says, I can't believe. I says, this isn't giving any help to anybody. Really.
Yeah.
I says, except for the guy who's living under the bridge.
Yeah.
I says, you can't have anything? And what about the home visits? Isn't that intimidating?
It's very intimidating. And when I read it, that piece about it, I wrote right on the side, do you need a subpoena to go to this level of home visit? We did home visits when I was there, but we did them for people who were homebound. They couldn't come to our office, so we'd do a home visit.
That's obvious.
Yeah, and we'd let them know we're coming. We give them the time and the date we're coming. We go to people, because you don't know. You know, you need to be safe. You got to look at it in a safe way. We'd go with our application, and we'd usually do the application for the person, help them out.
We're probably talking someone who's disabled and someone who's elderly.
We had a woman that was in a wheelchair on
mentally
the 3rd floor on the south end of town. Now, she was a difficult client, but it doesn't matter. She was in a wheelchair on the 3rd floor, homebound. And every now and then she
Call for help.
called for help, legitimate help. And, you know, it was tough. We had to swallow sometimes, but we went out there because that was our responsibility.
But you were doing a home visit to help,
Yeah.
not to try to deny the person's application as what's happening.
And I didn't inspect it. The only time I went into a house and did a home visit is we had a family of like 8 kids or something. And they were like, it was every week they were coming in for food, and they had food stamps. We're not supposed to supplement the food stamp program. That's what you get. The federal says this is what you get. So they were coming in week after week saying, I need more food to feed my family. I need more food. And I'm like, well, first time we helped them. Second time I questioned it. Third time I did a home visit. And I actually said, I need to really look at your house and see where things are at, and they had nothing or very little. I mean, they needed they needed meat to make food, and they didn't even have a can thing that they could add water to. They had limited based on the fact that this was a household, an intact household where people were working, but there were 10. You know, so we did get that squared away with getting some donations and things, and so we did get it squared away. But it took a little bit of work on my part and the commissioner at the time's part to get that done. But you can't just sit on the other side of a bulletproof glass or in his office and just dictate stuff like this. And the other thing I want to tell you, Deborah, these guidelines they're guidelines. They're supposed to be based on law. I questioned the HIPAA law, and I questioned the home visit, and I questioned a couple other things, but I'm not prepared to get into it in details today. But I questioned that because, the Board of Aldermen give this to the city solicitor. City solicitor reads this, and he says to them, this is following the law. So how are they wrong in voting for?
How much time did the solicitor spend in looking through this 33-page document?
My understanding is that he said that he didn't read it verbatim,
No.
not at all. So,
Yeah.
but you're getting that third hand here.
But you would look through this document and make maybe some changes for the interest of the poor.
Yeah, but even if I would straighten out the laws, and I would do something about the HIPAA law thing that's in there that I think is a major lawsuit.
Disclosing any personal
Right.
health issues that they may be having at the window.
At the window, and I don't know how he even got away with that one, but it's right up front, so it's not, how could you miss it? But maybe they didn't know there was a sign in the in the waiting room that says that. And maybe they've never been in the waiting room. I don't know. I want to respect the aldermen and give them the benefit of the doubt, because I have not talked to any of them about this. But I know they got this from the city solicitor, so they voted in a positive way. It's
But
really
it's-
unfortunate. I hope they bring it back, because my understanding is they've gotten a lot of feedback, because I've gotten some calls
Okay, yeah.
about changing this document. And I did see Barbara, Barbara Shaw at the forum, and she said, I hope the first thing you do when you get elected is to do that. Now, that doesn't mean she's going to vote for me, but that's how upset she was about that.
Exactly.
You know,
And it needs to have another pair of eyes. I
Ah.
think it needs another pair of eyes.
I agree.
Well, we have a couple minutes left, and
That was
so
fast.
It does go fast. So, any ending words here where you want to just encourage the voters to vote for you?
I think the voters need to look at a different person for that office. They really need to consider the fact that Paul has been in there something like 14 years. I'm far more qualified than he is, because he speaks about qualifications. I can save money as well. And even if I take that $50,000 from the difference in our wages, and I'd use it to help the poor, or I give it to another agency, something. There's stuff to do. You can do stuff. But I think the big thing, Deborah, is that we really need to look at the overseer of the poor. We really need somebody in that office that is responsible enough to follow the law. And that's not happening. And following that law requires compassion.
Exactly. And the law is not so specific as what he's made it in these city guidelines.
No, that's pretty. Well, the thing about this is very threatening. There's all these must, and if you don't, you're misrepresented, you're terminated, so you're gone. So it's all a threat. You can't. How do you feel comfortable going to ask for help when you're being threatened?
Right. It's not meant to be that way.
That's an abusive parent, and we would put that abusive parent in jail or bring them to court, wouldn't we?
Exactly. Well, Diane, I wish you the best in your campaign.
grateful.
Maybe we can come have you again. There's several weeks, and if you win this time, we'll
I'm hoping for a win in the primary, obviously.
September 15th, folks.
Yes,
September
and vote for me, please, because I can't do this alone.
No.
I really, and please remember, 6,000 people voted for me over. They know that they know me, they get my message, and they came out and voted. So please,
Great.
hear
Great.
me.
Okay, September 15th, folks. Diane Guimond for Welfare Commissioner, and get out and vote. All right. Thank you so much for being with us. Take care.